Joe Musso alongside Bryant, McFadden, and Emory. Hunt, I think an opening thought. You calling for something?
Yeah,
right
you
here?
said the trifecta. Actually, you got to add the fourth, the fumble recovery.
Gotcha.
As well.
So we got the sack,
forced fumble, fumble recovery,
and the touchdown. Fair enough. That's the quad box right there.
Quad box.
We lead off with something we don't see every day. We love seeing these guys when we do. Bryant, McFadden, let's talk about the run game here for Houston, because came in a bit of an identity crisis after back-to-back losses. Did they find themselves in the form of Joe Mixon tonight?
Yes, they did, but I wanted to see more of Joe Mixon. Halftime, 11 carries for around 70 yards. You look at what he finished, I think he finished around 20 with 22 touches. Emory, Joe, we need to see more. It felt like in the second half, they wanted to showcase C.J. Stroud. They wanted to throw the football. I understand you want to get the area attack going, but in a game like tonight, 28 was rolling. He was cooking. Halftime, I said Joe Mixon was looking like Booby Miles. He wanted to show you guys that he can go above and beyond that personality on the football field based on what he did in the first half. Now, when you look at what they would like to do moving forward offensively, I think it's safe to say their offense needs to run through number 28. Yeah. A year ago, it was about C.J. Stroud. They didn't have the luxury of having a guy like Joe Mixon in the backfield. But now you have Joe Mixon, and you look at what he's done since becoming the Houston Texans. He's been your best offensive playmaker, especially with Nico Collins not being in the lineup. So I think that should be the identity for the Houston Texans moving forward, because we know with Nico, you're going to be able to throw the football. But in a game like tonight, I'm okay in seeing Joe Mixon get anywhere north of 24 touches.
It's wild because when you watch these games and you watch how game flow goes, and you saw how Joe Mixon started the game, he was like, all right, if I'm a coach, I'm like, that's less passing plays I got to call. And them trying to throw the football a lot kept Dallas in the game, because Dallas pass rush was kind of getting back there in the pocket against C.J. Stroud. Had they ran the football, the game would have been over a lot faster, and they would have been able to save a lot of these plays for the next weekend. So just keeping Dallas hanging around, albeit their defense knocked them out, but the run game was popping from carry one throughout the rest of this ball game. They should have stuck with the run game, but Joe Mixon is really showing you that he's one of those top backs in the league.
And it's really the luxury of a run game on the road. Now 5 consecutive road games with 100 or more rushing yards and a rushing touchdown, tied for the longest streak in the Super Bowl era. I know we can nitpick at times. This is a Houston lopsided win, but is it the type of win that makes you feel better about them? After those 2 losses, we were looking at some second half woes. They show up in this second half. A defensive touchdown definitely spurs them forward a little bit, but do you feel any differently right now than you did before this 60 minutes of football about the Houston Texans?
I think I called on the defense at halftime, because first half, they didn't touch Cooper Rush. Yeah. Second half, they got home. Back there. They got home. That's a bright spot. But Joe, Emory, I still have my concerns with their offense. It's something about the disconnection with C.J. Stroud and his pass catchers. We saw some throws that were not there. Of course, the offensive line still has some issues in protecting the quarterback. The bright spot for their offense has been the running game, has been Joe Mixon. But when you talk about the expectations for this team coming into this season, we thought we would see, no question, balance. We thought we would see efficiency, an aggressive style, and most importantly, accuracy. Yeah. Those things haven't been there, not to mention how inconsistent the offensive line has been. You were able to weather the storm tonight, but to Emory's point, this game was very, very close. This was a potentially almost a one-possession game when you look at the Aubrey field goal that was taken off the board, and it worked out for Houston. But outside of that, this was a close game, and the final score doesn't tell you the tale of the tale of how this game actually played out.
I'm going to just say the quiet part out loud, man. A lot of times when we watch these games and these coordinators, they're trying to get jobs. And when you're trying to get jobs, you try to make you look like the genius. So the smart thing would have been, hey, let's just lean on the run game tonight, close this game out and get out of Dodge pretty quickly, take that 3-hour drive back to Houston from Dallas. But no, you want to show the passing game, you want to show off C.J. Stroud, you want to get people to talking about your offense, so therefore you can be a hot head coaching candidate at the end of the season. However, if you are just doing your job, the things that you're looking for will ultimately come looking for you. So I just think that's the underlying reason when we see a lot of these games that tend to get pass happy when the run game is working. But what I loved about the Houston Texans defense, they answered the call. You start to see a little bit more pop both figuratively and literally, and what they were doing in terms of tackling and forcing their will on these receivers going across the middle of the field. I love the energy that they played with in the second half, which is why they were able to close out the game more so than the offense.
Now a 7-4 record, first place comfortably in that AFC South. Their opponent in this one, Dallas, we came in with very low expectations. Cooper Rush in the first half at least looked like the quarterback that maybe should be in this game. We talked a lot in pregame about Trey Lance's opportunity potentially coming the rest of the way. It's the longest losing streak since 2015, the season before Dak Prescott was drafted. It's also their worst 10-game start since 2020 when Dak broke that ankle. Dak's not coming back.
No.
The season is over. What is the carrot dangling out in front of this team that keeps them showing up to the park? Because as we said, you got 3 games in an 11-day span, Mac. How do you keep going forward?
Pride, and you have to fulfill your employment requirement.
Yeah.
This is your job. This is your job to go out and compete regardless who's in the uniform or not. This is what you're supposed to do. Now, I understand not having a franchise quarterback, your back is against the wall, but you still got to go out and compete. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Trey Lance this upcoming Sunday against the Commanders, because clearly Cooper Rush has looked out of whack in this offense. Cooper Rush doesn't seem comfortable, and the pocket presence wasn't there because the offensive line were dealing with injuries, and of course they allowed the guys that were putting pressure on him to get back home.
And no run game to help you out.
No run game. But the run game hasn't been there the entire season.
Yeah.
So now you talk about having some issues on the offensive line. I think the best answer for them would be put a more mobile quarterback in, a guy who maybe can make people miss, maybe can buy some extra time, because I don't think the offensive line is going to be any better than what we saw tonight.
Totally agree, because at the end of the day, I'm not a body language expert, but you can see the body language from these guys on offense, how they just seem lethargic and checked out mentally, and that manifested itself to the physical mistakes that we saw out there on the field. And for Trey Lance coming in the ball game, it injects some new life. It gives you a different element. It helps make you an 11-on-11 team offensively. And we saw a little bit tonight. Kevontae Turpin getting the ball, having a touchdown. We saw the new young rookie tight end and Brevin Spann-Ford getting an opportunity to play, be more a part of the offense. So when you factor in a new guy that's trying to make a team and try to make his name and try to secure his spot for next season, or even his place in the NFL, you're probably going to get a little bit more juice coming from that guy, which is why I think they should go with Trey Lance, because the offensive line is banged up. He helps enhance the run game, and he's going to be playing for his NFL future, albeit, such a short time he's been in the league so far, if he goes out there and gets a chance to play. So I expect to see him next week versus Washington, and I expect to see this offense look a lot better, because they had opportunities to move the football. They were moving the ball, but Cooper Rush just couldn't feel the pressure, some errant throws, and then things started to snowball downhill, and that's where they started to lose control, and that's why they ultimately got blown out.
Maybe some value in getting another quarterback the opportunity and the reps. Is there value in moving on from a head coach at this point in the season when things are going this way, Emory? We're not here to call for anybody's job, but again, 3 games in 11 days. Does Mike McCarthy make it to the Thanksgiving table?
I wouldn't move on from him, because, again, this is a guy we know he can coach. 3 straight 12-win seasons. He's won a Super Bowl, albeit some years ago, but at the end of the day, he knows how to coach ball. I think the issue is where they just can't overcome a lot of these injuries. You talk about some of their prized players on the defensive line, Sam Williams, and what they had in Marshawn Nealon, 2 guys they expected to be a part of that rotation are on IR. Offensive linemen are going down. We saw Zach Martin is sort of going down. So right now they're just banged up, and they don't have the talent overall to overcome that. And I think that's where the issues lie with this football team this year.
I agree with Emory, because if you move on from Mike McCarthy right now, where do you go, right? This is bigger than Mike McCarthy.
Yeah.
I felt like with this team being healthy, they still were built wrong from within the trenches. There was an issue a year ago. You couldn't run the football. You couldn't stop the run. You didn't make any significant changes. Basically came back with the same personnel. Well, actually, your personnel got worse because you lost some pieces, and you lost a defensive coordinator that was really causing a lot of terror for opposing offenses.
And think about the running backs in the open market this offseason.
Yes. You had issues running the football a year ago. Your best answer to those questions from 2023 was to bring back a guy who you let go to start this 2023 season is Ezekiel Elliott. He was supposed to be your saving grace. So for me, this problem is bigger than Mike McCarthy. But of course, he has to wear all of the blows and all of the punches, all the criticism, because he's the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. But the personnel does not fit what the expectation is for the Dallas Cowboys. And now it's really showing up because you're dealing with injuries to some guys that could probably sweep some things under the rug for a short period of time. So me personally, I think he's going to ride it out. I don't think firing him would, because if you fire him, do you expect to see a change? No.
Yeah.
No. So it is what it is. It's unfortunately, they got to get ready for next season. They got to compete and try to be competitive. But this team, with a healthy Dak Prescott, was struggling. With DeMarcus Lawrence healthy, with Michael Parsons healthy, they were struggling. So what you think going to happen when you don't have those guys?
Could be a power vacuum there. Let's get back to the positive. Time now for our Talk About It. Game-changing performance post-game, as always, presented by Old El Paso. Start somewhere fresh. I think there's somewhere to start. Obvious here, Mac. Your player of the game is who?
Yeah, I got to go to a defender, Emory. Derek Barnett is my Talk About It player of the game. And here's why. A 64-yard field goal attempt. At that time, the score was 20-10, if I'm not mistaken.
Would have made it a one possession.
RB came in. He would have been good from 70, right? Guess what? It was a penalty. On who? Derek Barnett slapped the guard upside the ear hole, 15-yard penalty, extra downs for the Dallas Cowboys. Guess what? They didn't score. Went for it on 4th down. Didn't get anything. So they had potentially put 3 points on the scoreboard to make it a one-possession ball game. But because of the penalty of Derek Barnett, it gave them extra possessions that they didn't get any points from. Then the very next offensive series for the Dallas Cowboys, Derek Barnett came around that edge, got low, ran the hoop, sack, forced fumble, fumble recovery, and defensive touchdown, all in the same play. So, Derek Barnett, I applaud you for being undisciplined, and I applaud you for having a short-term memory.
A 15-yard penalty. That's a funny way to get a game ball. I love it.
You better believe it, because what he did actually took points off the scoreboard, and it actually helped me also in my fantasy week because I was playing against Aubrey. He was the kicker I was playing against.
All right, well, you talk about fantasy. The highest points per week by a running back this season goes to Joe Mixon. I can only assume, Emory Hunt, he is your Talk About It game-changing performance.
Of course, there's no one else. I told you, Joe, and I told you, B-Mac, the dude runs like Tigger, man. He just has an upright style, just bouncing on his ankles, very springy, 5.5 yards a carry, 20 carries, over, 109 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 catches, 44 yards receiving. So he was filling up the box score. He filled up the stat sheet. And we saw the impact of the game that he had on his defense. They got tired of tackling Joe Mixon. They got tired of trying to figure out where he's going to go. He's not just a front side runner. He's working front side to back side. So he's seeing the cutback lane. He has the burst, the acceleration, even as he's getting older. And I'm saying older, but he's still a very young back with a lot of tread left on the tires. He was phenomenal today from start to finish. He is my Talk About It player of the game.
Emory Hunt, Bryant, McFadden, great stuff. As always, we appreciate you, fellas. Here as we wrap up Week 11 in the NFL. Oh, wow. Shout out to the Houston Texans social media team. That is a L falling from the sky at AT&T Stadium, hearkening back to what happened pregame. Thankfully, nobody injured in that incident.
Look out below.
The sky falling in Dallas.
That's nice. Kind of petty.